Behind closed doors, I'm a fool for your love.
Everyone, my name is Anthony, and welcome back to the Anthony James Show here on Sports Fan Entertainment. It seems the past few years, especially, we've been talking about the NFL playoffs, the problems with the NFL playoffs, what we need to do to fix it. Do we need to add a seventh team to each the AFC and NFC for the playoffs? What do we do to fix the playoffs? Well, I think I found a solution. I'll be honest though, I'm pretty sure a lot of you will disagree with it, because it seems on here, usually when I say something that's out of the norm, you people disagree with it, which is fine. But I'm going to tell you how I think the playoffs should be. I think it could work well. And I guess with that being said, let's get into it. It's actually pretty simple how I think the NFL playoffs should be fixed. If you have a winning record, you're in the playoffs. It's that simple. If you have a winning record, you're in the playoffs. To me, I think if you have a winning record, you deserve to be in the playoffs. This is the first season, after the past four before it, in which we saw a 10-6 team miss the playoffs. Let's not forget, it was about now 10 years ago when the Patriots went 11-5 and missed the playoffs. So we've seen countless double-digit teams miss the playoffs, and at least in my eyes, it doesn't make sense that a team with a winning record, especially with at least 10 wins, misses the playoffs. That's why this way, you'd have it where if you have a winning record, you're in. So let's look at this past season. We had four teams with a winning record miss the playoffs. Granted, three of them were 9-7 and one was 8-7-1, so I could see an argument about why they shouldn't be in the playoffs, but they weren't in the playoffs, and they had a winning record. In my world, we have seen both the AFC and NFC with two playoff scenarios where there'd be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 seed, of which means the number 1 seed faces off against the number 8, 2, 7, so on and so forth. I think that could work. Now I'm sure you're asking, well, what happens when the seasons when there's more than 8 or there's less than 6? This is what I would like to do. I'd like to have a committee decided. For one, I think the NFL would love this. It could bring in a lot of ratings after week 17 where you get the committee to decide how the playoffs go. I think that could be a lot of fun. And then you kind of decide it from there. Now, this is where I could see myself potentially lose people, where they would disagree with what I have to say, but like I said, I don't care. I'm going through it and I'll tell you how I think this should work. Now, there are two scenarios I think you guys will really dislike. For one, let's start out with this. I think we can all agree on this. If you win the division, you deserve to be the top seed. So, let's say like this year. This year we had the Texans host the Raiders, even though the Texans were 9-7 and the Raiders were 12-4. I'd like to keep it that way. If you win the division, if you have a winning record and win the division, you deserve to be one of the top seeds. Even if that means that number 4 seed has a better record than the number 5, you still deserve that because you won your division. However, if you go 500 or if you have a losing record like the Panthers did a couple years ago, you don't deserve it. Now I can see an argument where you say, okay, if you go 8-8, you can still go to the playoffs and win your division. I can see that, but here's the scenario I'm going to say. Like, let's go back to a couple years ago when the Panthers went 7-8-1. You're not making the playoffs. You won your division, but you're not in the playoffs. You need to have a winning record. So we get those rare scenarios where a team has a losing record and wins their division. In my eyes, if you have a losing record, I don't care if you won the division. You don't deserve to be in the playoffs. If you are 8-8, okay, we can make an argument. I'm fine if you want to do 8-8 and they make the playoffs. That's okay with me, but if you have a losing record, you shouldn't be in the playoffs. And I know the two teams that have had a losing record winning their division did win their playoff game, but let's be honest, did they deserve to go to the playoffs? No, there were more deserving teams. That's at least in my eyes. And I can see why people would disagree with me on that, because you're like, if you win the division, you should still be in. I don't really agree with that. If you have a losing record and win your division, you shouldn't be in the playoffs. Now here, if you guys didn't disagree with me on that, I think you're going to disagree with me on this. What happens in those scenarios when we have, let's say, the AFC? I'll just use the AFC as an example here. Let's say the AFC has 5 or 4 teams with a winning record. And then the NFC has 8 or 9, or maybe even more than that. This is where I might lose you guys. I think the committee should decide in that case to get rid of the AFC and NFC that year and just go by best record. Have the division winners at top by winning percentage, and then everyone else after them. And that's where I can definitely see people being like, whoa, that's not how it should work. Well, it wouldn't be fair in that scenario. It wouldn't be fair to have an AFC where you only need to beat 2 teams and you go to the AFC and you go to the Super Bowl, while in the NFC you'd have to beat 3 or 4 teams to go to the Super Bowl. Just wouldn't be fair in my eyes. Now, of course, you can disagree with it. And this is just a scenario I thought of. I thought this could be an interesting one. So let me recap. What we would do is, instead of having it where you need to be one of the 6 teams to make the playoffs, win your division, or be a wildcard team, if you have a winning record, you're in. Now, I will put a little asterisk. If you want to say 9-7, you need to have a double-digit season to make the playoffs. I can see that argument too. I feel like if you win 10 games at least, you should be in the playoffs. 9's a little bit more iffy, but either way, I'm fine. I won't be mad if a 9-7 team misses the playoffs. However, they do have a winning record, so that's why, for this at least, I'm going to say winning record. So you have a winning record, you make the playoffs. If you have a losing record and won your division, you don't make the playoffs. And if you went 500, that's another one that's up to interpretation. I probably would. Even though it's not a winning record, I would, just because it's your division, and you see a lot of more 8-8 teams than you do losing record teams, 7-8-1 or 7-9. You just see a lot more 8-8 teams. So I would be okay in that scenario. However, I wouldn't mind it where if you still need to win, have a winning record to go to the playoffs, even if you win your division. And then in the seeding, you'd have the division winners at the top, followed by everyone else, and you go best record. Best record of the 4 divisional winners, then after that, best record of everyone else. And that's how you do it. And then if we need to, we'd get rid of the AFC and NFC standings and just put everyone together. Which in that case would mean we could potentially see a Super Bowl where it's 2 NFC or 2 AFC teams going head to head. And again, I can understand why you guys wouldn't like it where either a team has a losing record winning their division and they miss the playoffs, or I can see why you wouldn't like it that a team that we see 2 AFC or 2 NFC teams in a Super Bowl because we got rid of the conference standings. I can understand your problems with that. However, I think this would make the playoffs a lot more better. At least a lot better. Not a lot more better, just a lot better, at least in my eyes, because I think you'd give more teams a chance. At the end of the day, I just don't think it's fair when a team goes 10-6 and misses the playoffs. This year was the exception, but the previous 4 seasons we saw a 10-6 team miss the playoffs. And in my eyes, if you go 10-6, that should almost be a guaranteed playoff spot. And at the end of the day, if I'm the NFL, I'd really like this, because more likely than not, you're going to get more games than you usually do in the playoffs by doing this. And I think it'd be a fair way. You'd adjust it, and you potentially could get ratings and viewership when you have the committee decide how the playoffs will be. I'm sure you see people tune in for March Madness. I'm sure if the NFL did their version of that, people would tune in. But that's how I think the playoffs could be changed. I think I did a pretty good job explaining it. If you do have a question of how it works, leave it in the comments. I'll be sure to check that and answer it if there's something that you didn't understand. It's a different way of the playoffs. I haven't heard anybody say this before, and I understand why people would disagree. But I think it could be fun. It could be something different. It could be something interesting. Because let's be honest, you have the NBA where over half the league makes the playoffs. And then in the NFL, you have it only where about 33% of the teams make the playoffs. I think it'd be better if the teams with a winning record makes the playoffs. But that's just my opinion. Tell me what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like. And of course, if you're new to me, you can follow me on Twitter at Anthony James TV, link in the description, and subscribe to my channel, Anthony James TV. I'm doing recaps on all 32 teams, and I have draft videos, of course, too. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Until next time, this is Anthony. I'm out. Thank you all for watching.
Behind closed doors, I'm a fool for your love.